Welcome to the Storyteller podcast. This is week 5. So we're in a sermon series called Storyteller because Jesus was the greatest storyteller there was. And so we're just dissecting the Sunday message. And so this week we have Chris Jackson as our guest.
Not Barb?
Nope. What?
You've never heard this story before?
You never heard about Barb?
Yeah, you've never heard about
My
Barb
alter
Jackson?
ego.
I called her Barb for a whole podcast or something. I can't remember what it was, but it was like,
It was a
really?
podcast.
I think you
Your
told me
name's
that.
not Barb?
Okay, well, we're talking about forgiveness. So hopefully Chris, a.k.a. Barb, has forgiven Mike
she
for
has.
calling
She
him
already
the wrong
told me.
name.
Yeah,
Okay,
she
That was an easy one.
fabulous.
Yeah.
Okay, so what we're going to do, I'm going to read the parable, and then Mike is going to recap that, and then we're going to get a discussion with Chris. So this week is Matthew 18:21 through 35. It's called the parable of the unmerciful servant. Then Peter came to Jesus and asked, Lord, how many times shall I forgive my brother or sister who sins against me? Up to 7 times? Jesus answered, I tell you, not 7 times, but 77 times. Therefore, the kingdom of heaven is like a king who wants to settle accounts with his servants. And he began the settlement. A man who owed him 10,000 bags of gold was brought to him. Since he was not able to pay, the master ordered that he and his wife and his children and all that he had be sold to repay the debt. At this, the servant fell on his knees before him. Be patient with me, he begged, and I will pay back everything. The servant's master took pity on him, canceled the debt, and let him go. But when that servant went out, he found one of his fellow servants who owed him 100 silver coins. He grabbed him and began to choke him. Pay back what you owed me, he demanded. His fellow servant fell to his knees and begged him, Be patient with me, and I will pay it back. But he refused instead. He went off and had the man thrown into prison until he could pay the debt. When the other servants saw what had happened, they were outraged and went and told their master everything that had happened. Then the master called the servant in. You wicked servant, he said, I canceled all your debt of yours because you begged me to. Shouldn't you have had mercy on your fellow servant just as I had on you? In anger, his master handed him over to the jailers to be tortured until he could pay back all he owed. This is how my heavenly Father will treat each of you unless you forgive your brother or sister from your heart.
Yeah. So when getting ready for this is the thing that always stuck with me was when it comes to trying to figure out how to be more like Christ, right? Because that's our daily, we wake up every day, we're trying to figure out how to be more like Christ. I would say for me, and I don't know about everybody else, but I think this is the hardest one of all, is try to figure out how to forgive. And I think, so I'm sitting here thinking as I'm preparing this, like, have I really forgiven some of these people that I thought that I had forgiven? Because in here, Peter's, when they're talking about it, Peter's talking about people that are close to him. So it's the church, like people that should know better than to hurt you. Like that's the thing that is really hard with this. It's not like somebody did something that doesn't know you and we just need to forgive him. These are people that he's talking about inside of the church who know better, who are Christian people, who are making decisions that, are harming other people. And so, Peter starts it off by saying, well, I'm going to forgive way more than everybody else forgives. But then, Jesus, like always, puts the mandate out there that would say, you need to forgive like I forgave you. And that goes back to, I don't know if it's last week or the week before. So the greatest commandments, right? Love the Lord your God with all of your heart, mind, and soul, and love your neighbor as yourself. And so we can't really love well until we've understood the way that we've been loved, and we can't really forgive well until we understand the way that we've been forgiven. So I think the challenge of this parable is to try to figure out, can we have radical forgiveness? Because I think that's, like, if you gossip and, I guess, can forgive and, that's okay. But this is like radical forgiveness. This is, the first part of the parable says, here's a guy that owed 10,000 bags. You're never going to be able to pay it back. He forgave you of that. So God forgave us of something we could never pay back. And then we turn around and treat other people without mercy. And so I guess for you guys, when you think about forgiveness, hard thing, easy thing, getting easier, always been easy?
No, it's not always been easy, but it is freeing. You know, there is power and freedom in forgiveness that you can't get anywhere else. You know, when I'm just going to.
Sure.
Okay.
Perfect.
When I was a child, I was sexually abused by my father, and he was also verbally abusive. I got my spankings, but I probably deserved those. But anyway, it took a long time for me to be able to forgive him of that. But it was a forgiveness that you forgave, and it happened again, and you forgave, and it just kept repeating. And so you got to the point where you can forgive, but sometimes you have to walk away, you know. And after I did that, my forgiveness became much easier and much, I don't know, I just feel like I have forgiven my parents for the way that I was raised, and I'm okay with it. You know, and it has been a long time.
Yeah, well, talk about, again, because for the people that are out there that are maybe navigating, because one of the biggest questions afterwards was, I don't know if I really have forgiven, right? Like,
yeah.
that's a big question. In fact, I have meetings set up this week with people that were like, listen, after the message, like, I thought that maybe I've forgiven, but I'm not exactly sure that I have. So when you talk about that freedom, what did it look like before, and then how did you know that you had the freedom of forgiveness?
I think I finally figured out that I'd truly forgiven after my father had passed, and my mother reached out, and she's like, oh, I've got these pictures, and I want to do this, and I want to do that. And I'm like, you know, I've forgiven you a long time ago, and I love you, but I really don't have anything that I want to do with you. And that was just gave me so much freedom, you know, and I think the freedom is important. Just, you know, that God gives you that freedom. He gave it to us. And
Right.
if we don't give it to others, then we're going to hell.
And so part of what you're saying is that part of your freedom was disconnection too, right? Like learning.
I really felt, and, you know, it was several years before I even was able to tell my husband what had happened. But he helped me through it as well, you know, he was very strong in his belief that, you know, I don't want my children around that, and which I did not either. So, you know, there was a cycle that had to be broken.
Right.
And so he was so helpful in doing that for me, you know, and it's because he loved me. I don't know why, but he did.
And so since then was that like, because that's like,
That was a long time ago.
but that's big forgiveness, right?
Yes,
Like that's
yes,
not.
yeah.
So has that made forgiveness easier as you go?
Maybe.
Okay.
We were talking about this at lunch today with my life group, and my ex-daughter-in-law came up, and that's another one that I have a hard time forgiving. You know, when your grandson calls crying at 21 years old because his mother did something again, it's like, that's hard, you know, but I just pray for her all the time, you know, and that helps, just praying for that person. You know, you're supposed to pray for your enemies, and I don't really consider her an enemy, I guess, but maybe I do. I don't know. but it hurts me when she hurts other people,
Right.
you know, and I hate seeing that. And so you just have to ask for forgiveness for being angry with her.
Right. And so one of the tools you would say is if that you're struggling with forgiving someone, that you would say, put them on your prayer list every day.
Every day.
Now, listen, you were at a
Well, maybe not every day, but
you were at a small group today where I'm guessing that there are some people that they don't want to put on that list. Right? Like, I'm just guessing, like, if you're sitting around a table with a lot of people that have hurt people deeply,
yes.
I mean, to send, okay, I'm going to get up today and now I'm going to pray
Yeah.
for that person that hurt me.
And everybody struggles with that.
Yeah.
You know, and for a long time I thought, well, I don't have any enemies, you know, and then you look around the world and yeah, there is enemies out there, and sometimes you have to find them, you know, so that you can pray for them.
So you don't feel like, so in the everyday part of your life, is forgiveness a daily thing? Is it a monthly thing? Is it something that just happens once in a while? Because I feel like, at least in my position, forgiveness is something that's weekly. I mean,
would
it's
think
like,
it would be.
you know, and so I don't know how it is with everybody else, because I just, you know, I've said this before. Part of what helps me with forgiveness is I don't think anybody's heart is naturally bad. So I don't think anybody naturally on purpose. Now, obviously there's some of that there, but I look at it and I don't think anybody naturally goes out to hurt somebody else. I just think there are other things that go into it. And
I think Satan has a lot to do with that.
yeah,
You
right.
know? And he's directing them, you
Right.
know, and he definitely has control on some people,
Right.
you know, and you see that, and that's why I don't listen to the news, because I don't want to hear it.
Right.
But to answer your question, forgiveness, not probably monthly, maybe.
Okay.
But you know, on the people that I need to pray for,
Right.
I do that a little more often.
Right. Yeah. Jennifer, for you?
I think the more you keep walking with Christ, it gets easier. I have a couple things that I gravitate to. Now, they're not scripturally based at all, but Don Patmore one time said to Nick and I were in a meeting, and he's like, be a goldfish. And I said, Don, why do I want to be a goldfish? Because goldfish only remember things for 10 seconds and they move on. That was pivotal. I mean, truly, because I think of that at times. I'm like, I'm getting mad about something, or it's like, just let it go, because you don't know what somebody's going through, you know? And I have a saying on my desk. It says, don't ruin a good today by thinking about a bad yesterday. Let it go. That was something that was huge for me when I was struggling through something that somebody hurt me. I had to go back to that. It's like, why am I letting that fester within me? Because it's hurting me. They don't care anymore. They've moved on with life. But that's something that I go to that's like, okay, it happened. It is what
Right.
it is. And I have to forgive, and I have to move on. And God's got something for us. So
Right.
why are we sitting in that?
You want
we're
something
missing it. We're missing the good stuff by doing that.
You want something that's a little off the subject?
Sure.
About a goldfish?
Sure.
Do you know what the average attention span of a young person is today?
10 seconds?
6 seconds. Less than a goldfish. I read that in the ruthless elimination of hurry. They said the same thing, you know. Yeah, be a goldfish. Like, don't think of any of those things. But you realize, like, the attention span of a normal American is like 6 seconds. So we can't even pay attention as long as a goldfish.
Yeah, I know, it's
So,
terrible,
but-
isn't it?
Yeah, so here's a question. I think sometimes when you think through forgiveness, like forgiving somebody, we say it in our heart and then we ignore them. And so then by ignoring them, we don't really have to deal with the problem, but you really haven't forgiven them. You know what I mean? It's like, I'm just not going to, that person hurt me, so I'm not going to think about it anymore, right? But I'm also not going to be around them anymore.
Yeah.
So in your circumstance, that was right. But is it right in other circumstances?
Not always. You know,
Because I think that's the thing we got to navigate, right? 'Cause there is boundaries. Like
Yeah.
you should, obviously, if you're being sexually molested, you should put up a boundary and
Yeah.
get out and not go back and allow those things to happen. But what about in other circumstances? What about that person who every meeting you have with them or every other meeting you have with them or half the time you call them and then you just like, you know what? I'm just going to ignore them. I'm just not even going to talk to them anymore. Is that
17.
right?
No.
Wrong?
7 times 70.
Yeah.
You know.
But see, I think I think that is ways that we have dealt with forgiveness is we're just not even going to bring up the subject anymore.
Yeah.
Right. So we're not going to talk about it. We're not going to work through it.
That's true. I mean, I haven't talked about my past forever. I mean, I just never did. And then I got in this group, and I don't know, it just flowed out of me. You know, and I'm the oldest one in the group. You know, the rest of them are just young pups. But we talked about it today because I told them I was coming on, and I just asked them that they'd pray for me before I came on, and I got a note from one of them just before I come up here. I'm praying for you.
Aw,
It's
good.
like, that's sweet.
Yeah. Because I'm trying to figure that out in any relationship, because I think some of the heart, this is the boundary, and this was the hardest thing to try to preach on Sunday, is that I think the reason that there's such an emphasis on forgiveness is because there needs to be an emphasis on relationship. And I think part of what we've been taught in our society today is disconnect from a relationship that's hurting you, and that's your way of forgiving them.
Yeah.
Right now, I think that is, but on this other hand, can we continue to disconnect, or do we need to go to resolve the issue? Or do we just let it go? Like, how does that work?
Yeah, which one do you choose?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Do you have a thought, Jennifer?
Sometimes I think you do have to go resolve an issue.
Okay.
Just because, you say let it go doesn't mean it's done and over with,
Yeah, what does it mean?
Well, sometimes you're like,
You know what I'm saying? Because that is like, what does it mean to let it go?
yeah, you might still have an issue with that person you need to resolve, but that doesn't mean that you have to harbor all these horrible feelings towards them or ignore them, but sometimes you do have to, just kind of let it be.
But sometimes you have to address the problem too.
You do. You
have
do.
to go to that person and say, no, it's not, you can't.
Yeah,
You
and
can't do this
see,
anymore.
that's what I'm trying to figure out. So when we said, so the torture part, because I think this is the other part that people struggle with, is the same master that gave mercy at the end saying, listen, if you're not going to forgive, I'm going to torture you. So it's like, what does that look like? And you go back to when he says, before you take communion, if you have an issue with a brother or sister, you need to go resolve it.
Yeah.
What does resolution look like? And what is he asking us to do? Because, most of the times if we have an issue with people, because really close people, like the people that you're really close to, you just work it out.
Yeah.
Right? Like you sit down and say, you know what, that was crappy. I felt like the way you said things or the things, true?
And we've done that, yes.
Like the way that you said it, the way that you've approached it, which is the way it should happen.
Right.
I have an issue with you. You said some things and you did some things that weren't okay. I need to recognize that. You need to talk through it. We need to resolve it, and we need to be able to move on. But it's these peripheral, still body of Christ people, but peripheral people that were like, I wouldn't talk to you. Right? Like, I'm not gonna go talk to you anymore, because every time I'm around you, you just piss me off. So I'm not gonna talk to you anymore. Is that not true? Like, is that not how sometimes we're like, I've forgiven you, I'm just not gonna be around you.
It's like, I see him coming.
There's somebody else. Yeah.
You're at 18 minutes.
Yeah. So that's just the thing that I think, because I think the emphasis of this is, yes, we have to understand our own forgiveness, right? And we need to understand the depths of that, because the more you're forgiven, the less judgmental you are.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
So
I agree with
that to me is, if you want to see, if you want to know whether or not you forgot your story, look at how much you judge other people, right? Or how critical you are, because critical people tend to forget their story, or forget who they are when they become critical. So I think evidence of an unforgiving spirit is one that's very critical of other people, right? And it's not that somebody did something to harm you. You just don't have any problem pointing out everybody else's flaws, and hurting them in that way. And then I think the other part of it is, what relationships need to be restored, because the type of forgiveness that he's showing, the unlocking of the mystery, that's not how the normal world works. We don't forgive people who hurt us. We just don't. And so what's going to be different to the world is the way that we treat other people in relationship is going to be significantly different than the way the rest of the world treats people. And I honestly think it's almost worse inside of the church than it is outside of the church. Like, I've seen some of the biggest hurt I've ever seen inside of the church than I have even outside of the church. So I think as a body of Christ, we have to understand how important it is to forgive and be in relationship with, and trust that God's going to take care of some of that other stuff.
And if you don't forgive, you don't have joy. You gotta, and I don't know. I've always been a joyful person, because I think that I got the Holy Spirit living in me, and he, keeps me company when I'm at home by myself, and I can always find my joy in that.
Yeah, that great parting words. No, I'm just saying. I mean, for all of us, I think, we can just end with that. Is that what we can take away from this? Is pure joy is going to happen. One, because we understand our relationship with Christ, and we are joyful that He forgave accumulated debt, but He forgave it, and then knowing that we're in right relationship with other people, right? That we've done our part. There's other people are still can be whoever they are, but we've done, our part, in all of that. So when this comes out, if you are watching or listening to this, make sure that you like, comment, or share. We'd love to be able to get it on other people's feeds. And we'd love for you to continue on in this Storyteller podcast with us as we continue to not only navigate, what are the mysteries that we're uncovering together? We're navigating them in a way through other people's lives. And I love to see it through the lens, Chris, of your life and the things that God has done, and that we can all remember that with forgiveness comes freedom, and that's what He wants for each one of us. So thanks, everybody, for joining us, and we'll see you guys next week.